this episode, we discuss the technical aspects of 3D modeling and printing for practical work, especially in creating detailed prosthetics and animatronic components using software like CAD and ZBrush. We delve into teaching and learning new techniques, particularly the significance of hands-on experience when doing digital molding and sculpting. Then we take a look at taking on jobs without proper qualifications, highlighting the potential dangers and importance of safety in prosthetic and special effects work. With Sasquatch suits, severed heads and blood gags on stage, come and join us on episode number 94 of Battles with Bits of Rubber. Yeah, I still haven't made the leap mentally to video podcasts. One of the reasons is I don't mind doing it with you. I don't mind doing them at all, actually. One of the things that worries me is that guests might feel more self-conscious if they're seen, whereas if they're just heard, they can look how they look and they don't have to talk about how they appear. So, but we'll see.
True that.
But you and I can certainly do that. But maybe we're missing out on a trick if we don't do video. Anyway, so yeah, you're enjoying your Sasquatch.
Yeah, here, let me share my screen with you real quick for a second. I'll show you what he's looking like.
I'm very pleased that you scanned him. I saw you had the two different colors. Did you put the two different poly groups there?
I ran him through wrap, actually.
Nice.
So that automatically does it because I used a base mesh head from the 3D scan store that has good topology on it. And basically what wrap does is you can do points from the base mesh to your target. So it'll translate. So it basically takes that topology and applies it to your scanned object.
Nice.
An experiment at this point, but if it turns out, because we are printing an untextured version of the head that we're skinning with clay to do the details on that we'll mold.
Oh, nice.
But if this turns out nicely, I may just do it that way. I'm trying to get the textures pretty. I mean, they're probably deeper and more pronounced than they should be, but you lose some of that detail in the print. So
yeah.
And I'm just starting. It's nowhere near being finished, but I'm liking where it's heading.
That's fantastic. It's so cool. What a great tool to use.
Yeah.
Nice.
Thanks. Yeah, I love it. And gonna do the molding that you showed me, a couple weeks ago? Was it was that long ago?
It'll be time-stamped on video, but yeah, probably.
Crazy.
It's interesting you mentioned that. I taught my first sort of ZBrush sculpting molding class a couple of weeks ago. There was a guy came in and we had like a 7-day face-to-face. Well, we did 1 day Zoom and the other 6 days we're in the workshop and we scanned his head. We made a core, sculpted and printed and molded the whole thing, run pieces, applied it in 7 days. And
cool.
I felt a little bit not out of my depth, but it kind of prompted one of the 2 points that we want to talk about in this podcast, which was the importance of practical hands-on experience in doing digital equivalents of that work.
Oh, absolutely. And I tell students all the time, or told students all the time, that the best way to learn how to do something is to teach it to somebody else.
Yeah, it really does ram it home, doesn't it? Because you think carefully about it. But yeah, so I was kind of working at the limit of what I'm comfortable with ZBrush because I've been doing this for about a year now properly for jobs, but I've never sort of shown anybody else how to do it. So normally when I teach something, I'm teaching something that I have been doing for 30 years, but I haven't been doing ZBrush for 30 years. So I kind of felt like a charlatan doing it. But what was interesting is like 90% of what I'm doing really is basically molding and sculpting.
Yeah, I'm thinking with some aspects of ZBrush, I think I feel competent enough that I could comfortably teach it to somebody else. I mean, that's the way it was with After Effects, because I've been using After Effects since, like version 2 of After Effects, like in the early 90s, and still love After Effects. And it's incredible software. But I digress.
Well, I think ZBrush is equally brilliant, but what I'm so grateful for is the fact that when I'm making my molds, I've made molds for so long that I know how to make a mold. So I'm just basically sort of moving into a digital realm and I'm replicating. I've noticed I've replicated digitally how I work practically, just more efficiently, cleaner, and more iterable without mess,
Yeah,
without trash cans.
you're not spilling stuff in the shop. You don't have to wear a respirator.
Yeah, it's quite amazing. So it's been interesting to do that. It doesn't do everything, but you can see the scope for how it could do a lot more as printers catch up. Because that for me is the interesting thing about this is that with ZBrush, and I promise this is not going to be like a waving the flag for ZBrush podcast, but it just feels like the I'm so grateful for the practical experience. I would hate to have started ZBrush now, I think, because I'm doing things in ZBrush that I do have done for years, but I'm just really appreciating things like symmetry when it comes to putting keys in place or
Sure,
making keys
sure.
absolutely pristine, being able to switch off perspective so I can see in pure orthographic view whether I've got undercuts.
Well, the transparency and ghost functions
Oh, it's
are
insane.
crazy invaluable
Yeah, and making exact
to be able
one
to look
millimeter
inside
layer.
something while you're working on it.
Yeah, and it's just that kind of stuff for molding. That's where the molding and the sculpting really cross over. And I do really think that mold makers would do well with ZBrush because I think mold makers particularly are used to having to do things according to the material dictates, the material setting times and the conditions and the temperatures and the catalysts and all that kind of stuff. We've always had to worry about those things. So we're used to being told what to do and how to do it by the material. And I find that that's lent itself quite well. I think that's one of the reasons why Brian Best is very good at it too.
Mm.
He's one of the most generous and clever people I've known mold making for years. But once he moved into ZBrush, he was just kind of like he grew a pair of wings and just took off. It was just
Well, he's the British equivalent of Rob Freitas.
yeah, yeah. I remember the IMATs where those two met about 15 years ago. That was
Oh,
amazing.
I bet there was like
It was so
a
cool.
a cosmic thing.
It was like De Niro and Pacino meeting in Heat. Do you remember that scene?
Yeah.
But yeah, it was just from a mold making point of view. But I just
Well,
think
even from a life casting point of view, because with silicones and with alginate for sure, you've got time and temperature concerns to deal with, and if you're scanning somebody's head, you don't have those kind of constraints
no, but
to deal with. And if the scans, if it doesn't turn out, you just hit delete and do it over again, and you haven't wasted any material. It's just 3 minutes later.
yeah, and I think if you're used to having being dictated to by materials and by like if you make a mold of a clay sculpt, you only get one shot at it, right? You can't screw this up. When you're used to working under that kind of pressure, however difficult ZBrush is, it's actually a relief in a way to have the ability to just undo or save versions or have layers where you can, you know, switch between things because it makes everything plastic and changeable, which
Hmm.
you've never had that with mold making. So I think if you've been used to the heavy backpack of practical mold making, it's like taking the backpack off when you're sculpt doing it all in ZBrush. It's amazing, but you get the benefit because you did the hard stuff first practically. And I really noticed that. And I want to emphasize that there is no wasted knowledge with regards to mold making. I think
Well, it's
much
like we talked about it, prosthetics event last year. It's just another tool in the toolbox. I think you'd be foolish not to use it, but there it is. You have the choice.
mm,
And when time is money, it makes good sense to use the tools that are going to allow you to work more efficiently,
mm,
um, more quickly,
yeah,
and potentially even more iterations of the same sculpt, without degrading the original,
mm,
that you can show clients to say, okay, there's this version, this version, this version, is this version. You can, sign off on whichever one you want, and then take that one to to completion and chuck the others.
yeah, yeah. It's interesting with the ZBrush as well that, well, I should say with the digital. I realize I say ZBrush a lot because that's what I've been using. But one of the things that's, I think, obnoxious is the way that Maxon kind of took over from Pixelogic and now
Yeah,
changed the,
that's,
it's all,
I don't want to go there because I'll just get angry.
get angry, but it used to be you paid a chunk of money and you had it for life, and then they changed companies and now
Yeah,
they have a subscription model.
thankfully I bought it before Maxon bought Pixelogic,
Yeah.
so I've got it, but I'm not getting the updates anymore. But at least I've got I mean, I can't imagine that ZBrush is getting that much better, that it has capabilities
I can assure you
that I don't have.
no, no, it seems to have just bundled in with a bunch of Cinema 4D and stuff that I have no interest in because it feels
Yeah,
like, oh, you like this?
it's animation and rendering things for
Yes,
character work, and
which is not what I'm
that's
interested
not our
in.
bag.
No. So I think one of the things to point out, and we have mentioned this before, one of the things to point out is to look at Nomad Sculpt because for what I need, it's 90% what ZBrush is. And it's 15 quid, I think, or $15, depending on where you are,
Yeah.
for one-off purchase, and then it's yours. I think they started doing extra brushes, and there are like third-party sellers where they make, brushes and tools and macros for it that you can purchase separately. But even there, we're talking like 15, 20 quid. We're not talking 60 quid a month or whatever it is for ZBrush at the moment, just Z.
Hmm. After $1,000 layout to get up and running, and then it's almost like extortion. You say, yeah, things get broke. You got to keep paying, or we
Yeah,
might have problems.
I think hopefully Nomad will give them a run for their money because it just seems very wrong to be able to do that. But anyway, I don't want to.
Jumping back to 3D printing, did you see the link? Did I send you the link that I think saw it on LinkedIn? They are printing silicone now.
How exciting! I haven't seen it.
Yes. Yeah.
Wow,
So pretty cool.
that's really really exciting. Wow, I'll have to have
We
a look at that.
we have gotten there. I think I sent it to you. If not, I will find that because I can
Yeah,
send
please
it.
do.
I'm
I'll
pretty
be very
sure I
interested.
shared it with somebody. I thought it was you. But it's like, oh, this is groundbreaking.
That's awesome. Oh, that's really, really cool. It's interesting, isn't it? Because the materials that we work in, one of the things I think that's really useful with the digital stuff, like, and particularly with 3D printing, is obviously when you get a printer, you're probably like me, you go into Facebook, you join forums and groups
Hmm.
to that printer so that when things go wrong, you can kind of dig through the archives and ask questions about fixing stuff. And it's funny how often you see on printing forums very very simple molding questions crop up because a lot of people are interested in making molds of things like wax, like for candles or soap things or whatever.
Yeah.
And they're very very simple, open pore molds, so you and I would be like, oh, you can do that with your eyes closed. But there's a lot of people that don't know how to do that, but because they're printing things, they now are interested in making molds, so they're going into the sort of, for them, very new kind of uncomfortable territory. And I found it fascinating that no one's really talked about how the molding side of things works for 3D printing, because a lot of the things I print, aside from maybe jackets, I end up molding. So I only print something in order to get its form, its likeness, so that I can then make a mold off of it. So I don't
The
necessarily.
traditional way.
Yeah, yeah. But I found a lot of jackets I'm printing in PLA or PETG is quite nice for some things, but it's really nice to be able to make molds of things because you're not limited to having to only print things. Because I see a lot of people like on Etsy and stuff that print stuff, and the things they sell are all things that they have printed.
And they're basically one-offs also, that they're not going to make a mold of it and cast these, little, like game figures,
Yeah,
like
well, those kinds of
role-playing
things.
game figures is what lots of people are printing,
Yeah,
which is cool. But the growing uses, in our field are it's growing more and more, and people want to be able to do the kind of molds that we were doing practically, in a new way, like the stuff that we were talking about at TPE. Um, One of the things that kind of rubs me the wrong way is all of the scanner companies, um, maybe with the exception of Artec for their medical stuff, and at least I haven't seen it from anybody else. If they are doing it, is everything is geared still to scanning engineering things, to scanning hard surface objects instead of scanning organic things, like scanning your dog or scanning heads and body parts for makeup effects.
Yeah.
Or for other purposes. And still dealing with hair, with facial hair. Uh, I had to scan it's actually the actor who's playing our Bigfoot character for the Denver Zoo, has a beard about like yours.
Mhm.
And I needed to scan his head, or I wanted to scan his head so we could sculpt on his head so that the mask would actually fit him properly instead of, using a generic
Yeah.
core and sculpting on it. And I glued down his beard with gaff quat and put some tracking dots on it, even put a little powder on it. And we got a fairly decent scan of his head. I had to go to ZBrush and basically reconstruct him from the ears and the nose down and around the mouth. But then I took it into wrap and retopologized it and got a pretty damn fair likeness of what our actor looks like without a beard.
Excellent. So you had enough of the scan of the beard to
Yeah, no,
be
it's
able to know
definitely
that you were in the right ballpark.
definitely recognizable of him. So
Cool.
it's going to work fine.
And dimensionally, it's all accurate enough.
Yeah,
Because the good thing about it being an overhead thing is you're not worried about blending an edge on the cheek kind of thing. That is,
yeah, yeah.
yeah.
And we're using a wire mechanism like they did for the Star Wars, the Chewbacca thing, where the jaw activates a wire that will move the lips, and I've made paddles for the lips and paddles for the eyebrows so that when he opens and closes his mouth, the eyebrows will go up and down, and the lip will go up and down too. So you'll be able to see the teeth in the mouth, and it's going to look great.
Nice. And you're doing those you're printing those. You've done those in
Printing the teeth.
Canva.
Actually, I sculpted those. I used some dental, uh, some dental acrylic teeth that I have in my tooth cabinet,
Nice.
and I'm gonna mold those. Gonna cast those in resin, and we got the hair is from National Fiber Tech.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, so
Good hair then.
we're doing the whole suit in NFT for 4-way stretch. It's gorgeous.
Oh, beautiful. Can you tell me
Yeah.
about the mechanism underneath? So you're 3D printing the paddles and the bits
Yeah,
underneath
yeah.
the face?
I can show you what they look like. Hang on a second. Let me go grab one.
While Todd's doing that, we should probably sing a little song.
So I don't know how well you're going to be able to see this thing, but this is the
Oh,
lip.
wow.
This is the lip paddle, and
Awesome.
I've got holes in it, so the wire will go through that, and it'll attach to the jaw and come up and around to the lip, and when that jaw goes down, the wire will pull the paddle out. So it's 3D printed. It's got a little clevis pin and a cotter pin holding it in place, but it's nice and loose and free. So that'll push the lips out just a little bit. And then basically the same thing for the eyebrows. Go up and down, and it's got a little hole in the back of this top paddle to pull that up, and another little clevis pin and cotter pin holding it all together, and it very, very loose. And this will just glue inside the eyebrow. I'll take pictures of these so we can put these in the show notes, because nobody's gonna know what the hell I'm talking about when they can't see
Oh,
it.
that's so cool. You're okay to share that?
Yeah, absolutely. If people want copies of the files, I'm happy to share the files.
That's fantastic. How did you draw those up? Did you do them in Fusion or
Um, no, I'm not using few. I
you
basically
fell out
I
with Fusion?
used. Yeah, no, I fell out with Fusion again. They're falling into the same group as Maxon and these other and Adobe.
It's getting really greedy.
That there's how much money is it? How much do you need to keep making off of this stuff? Anyway, I went into 3D Builder, which is native to Windows, and built cylinders and cubes to specific measurements, because you can type in what you want, a 5 mil cylinder that's 20 millimeters long, and I use those in ZBrush to basically boolean out the places for the clevis pins and for the wire, a 2 millimeter hole for that, 5.5 millimeter for the 5 millimeter clevis pin, and just using primitives to build and stretch and boolean things out so everything works,
Nice.
and did all of the heavy lifting in ZBrush.
That's fantastic.
And
I
it
love the
was,
fact you can do stuff in CAD and then
yeah,
put it into ZBrush to,
yeah, it's great. And if I was any good at the hard surface modeling tools in ZBrush, I could do the whole thing that
nice.
way. I mean, you can make amazing things to build other things.
I mean,
It's great.
animatronics is something we've not really touched on that much in this podcast, and we really should, because we
Hmm.
have some very good animatronic people, but
Yeah, it's weird,
develop.
battles with bits of rubber, but a lot of those rubber bits use animatronics.
Yeah, and
You
getting
know,
the thing to fit between the person that's wearing it and the outside of the skin, that void. 3D printing and scanning and digital stuff really falls into its own there because you
sure,
can
because
really,
you can with the extract function, you can basically build your underskeleton in ZBrush from the sculpt
yeah,
and then frickin' print it.
even if it's just a template for you to make
Yeah,
into material.
something just to see if it's going to work
Yeah,
or not.
it's so cool. I remember Chris Clark, he used to do like a lot of, and I'm sure a lot of animatronic people do, but I just remember him doing it. He would like design mechs and then he would cut them out in card just to see if
Yep.
the principle
Yep.
would work, because obviously it makes sense to do that before you commit to ordering your metal or whatever. And then often you'd have to cut that by hand, because a lot of the workshops we were working in back then, we didn't have CNC. You had milling machines and
Sure.
and lathes and stuff, but it was all manual control. And so that was a lot of time to waste to see if your idea would work. So the idea of being able to make something and then scale it down or up or elongate something, having to redo it.
Well, now they've even got desktop CNC machines, that are about the size of a Canon or a
I haven't got the money
Hewlett
or the
Packard
space for that.
printer, but they're like $400
That's
for
crazy.
something that's like 2 feet by 2 feet. And if you're doing,
That's
I
enough for
be able to
me.
build, yeah,
That's all
I'm
I'm doing.
yeah,
And
I'm not building a full size elephant, puppet, but for small things, it's perfect. I could have done all that, these things on something like that. But it was easy enough to do it in ZBrush and then printed it on my um, Mega 8K from Frozen.
yeah,
In fact, I love that printer so much. I'm thinking of getting rid of my Mono X and my Mini 4K because I don't need all those printers. The Mega 8K is big enough to do your head on
yeah. I mean,
in one piece. What's the point of having?
I don't know. I mean, I do like the smaller printers for smaller things, but yeah, I totally get you. It's a good printer. But one of the things as well, I was going to mention about resin prints as well that may not be obvious is that when I was saying we were making pieces for this course, I don't use the resin to make the molds because I still haven't gotten past the inhibition. I found that the
Yeah,
deadened
that's
silicon still inhibits against freshly printed molds. I think it's fine after a period of time, but I still haven't gotten past that. I've used Inhibit X. I've tried all those things. It's not reliable enough for me. So
no,
I end
I've heard that Polytech has been developing some resins that do not inhibit, but
right.
I haven't tried it yet. I don't know if they're available yet.
Yeah. I mean, I think it would be really nice, but I found there are other issues with resin printed pieces, such as distortions in curing. So I've seen things
Mhm.
warp slightly during the cure, and I'm talking even when I've done it carefully with turntables, because often you want to I say overcure, you want to cure them for a long time to sort of help prevent the inhibition. so it's not just like 10 minutes. I might leave them on a windowsill for a week, you know.
Yeah.
They've warped within the first hour in the cure chamber. So it's not like it was leaving it on the windowsill that was the problem. Um, and that has helped, but I'm still nervous that, you know,
Are these hollow
or
parts or are they solid?
I've done hollow and I've also done ones with infill to try. I found ones with infill, like 10%, 20% infills are warping more
Really?
than
That's
hollow
weird.
ones. And sometimes, depending on the shape, you kind of have to have some kind of matrix on the inside to support the bits because the nature of the slice is such you might get an independent part floating, get exposed on a layer. And
Yeah.
anyway, this is in danger of getting into something very,
Yeah.
very
Yeah.
specific.
These little animatronic paddles are all solid,
Yeah,
but they're small enough that they're still very light and hollow they'd likely break.
yeah. Yeah, but you know, you can always replace them. That's the beauty of those things. Or
Yeah.
you can print them in a different material, a more durable plastic.
Hmm.
And you don't even have to have the printer. You could get someone else to do it or pay someone to do it.
Yeah.
The beauty of
Yeah.
this. But yeah, I found the resin is still
Or print them in
negative.
a flexible resin.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, with the tenacious or some
Yeah,
tenacious.
because I've got to do a head. I'm doing a musical theater piece, goes up in the fall that Trey Parker wrote years ago. It's called Cannibal the Musical. It's about Alfred Packer, and it's absolutely hilarious. It's so stupid and so fun. And one of the characters, Frenchie the Trapper, uh, gets his head chopped off at the end of near the end of the show, and I am going to scan the actress who's playing Frenchie and a Ute chief. I'm going to scan her head and then print it in flexible resin so that it'll bounce,
Nice. Very cool.
and just paint it with Pax paint and put the wig on it, because now the trick is going to be figuring out how to lop off Frenchie's head on stage.
We'll have to have a chat about that. I've done that for a couple of things. Did some on Game of Thrones. We can
But
go
but
through.
I'm going to scan her head with her mouth, like on. So
Whatever
it'll
face
have
she
a
can
fun,
hold.
so it'll have a funny expression on her face.
Definitely. Well, you can try a few expressions as well, couldn't you?
Yeah,
That's
and that's
brilliant.
the beauty of doing it with a scanner. You don't have to do all of these different alginate or silicone versions to
No, just do
get a crazy
heads.
expression.
Yeah,
Yeah.
just do the faces, and then you can whack them on a head that you make, or a generic head even.
Yeah.
If you've got that just a 3D scan store head. So,
Yep. So I may do that.
yeah, but I was going to say about the resin inhibiting the silicon. One way I've gotten around that is, and I owe this entirely to Horacio Martinez, who
Mhm.
um very, very generously uh showed me how he'd made a mold. He printed a negative and then made silicons out of it. And I started doing that too. So when I want a core, instead of printing a resin core and then molding that resin core, I just extract a thickness of 2 mil of a core mold of a core, sorry, that I've made, and basically print a core mold, which I will then put epoxy and Jesmonite or acrylic one or some kind
Hmm.
of backing in there. So it's a solid core. And then I just break off with a hammer or, a screwdriver. I break off the printed mold. So I have a positive in a material that won't inhibit. And then on top of that, I put a printed jacket that has a recess for a silicon. And so I basically I print a core with a sculpt on it, which I mold, and then I swap that out for a core that doesn't have the flashing and the sculpt on it. So I just use the same shape twice
We'll need pictures of these things too
to
in the show
explain.
notes to explain.
Yeah, and that works out really well because then I'm using printing to give me the accuracy, but the negative is actually like a PLA jacket with a silicon insert. And then I've got my epoxy positive core, and then they go together. And if there's any slight discrepancy, that doesn't matter because the PLA is a little bit flexible, the silicon's flexible, and so the edges meet perfectly fine so long as you secure it all the way around with clips or bolts or whatever you want to use. I'm using a lot more like big boulder clips
Yeah.
because they're quick. So that's a way of doing it, which again may not make a lot of sense, but I will put pictures in this. And we did feature this when we did our talk last year, but I'm using that habitually now, so that's good. But yeah, I'm having a lot of fun with it. I
It
still make
sounds
a
like
lot of
it.
mistakes, but it keeps me on my toes. I feel like a kid again, but I'm still making things, so it's not like I would hate to do this stuff and not have a physical object at the end of it. And one thing I've done, and I didn't invent this, I know other people have done it. I've seen lots of people do this, is print miniature versions of the molds and the cores and the jackets.
Yeah.
It works on a tiny scale. So you have like a 2-inch head and the jacket and just see how it works because it's really quick to print those. And then it's just a fun little thing too. And then you can see how it's going to work without having to spend the time and the money on making a full size version. I'm still limited to sort of head size at the moment, but that's pretty good. I'm happy with that for now. This brings us into our second part of the podcast, which I think is an interesting to talk about.
Yeah, and it's something that I think we've touched on before, but it's still happening. So not everybody's listening, or we're not saying it enough.
No, and that is the dangers of pretending to be qualified for the job you've taken on. There's no other way of saying it. Now, I must make this clear.
Genuine imposter syndrome.
Yeah, I must make this clear. I am not saying because we've all run into complications and difficulties and unforeseen things and specialist areas that we don't know about that are part of a job that we've all had to look for help. I'm talking specifically about questions that have been asked on forums to which honestly the proper answer is hire someone that knows how to do it. Why did you take on this job? Because it's like someone might be saying, like you might say, I might take on a job where I don't know how to do like my hair work is horrific, right? So I wouldn't take on a job with big hair stuff. But if there was a hair element, I would get people in who were hair specialists to do it.
Hmm.
Like that's the sensible way to do it. And when you respond with answers, or people respond with good answers, the kind of shitty responses you get back from them is almost like they don't want to know this stuff, or and
Yeah.
it feels a little bit kind of like, well, why are you doing this?
On the job is not the time or place to learn how to do something.
No, well, I have seen people with like the
Unless you're an intern working in a shop and somebody else is doing the heavy lifting and you're assisting because you're learning how to do it while you
yeah,
watch them do it. But
yeah,
to take on a job, yeah, I gotta make a dead body.
yeah.
How do you life cast
Well, I mean, again,
somebody?
it depends what it is. I mean, I'm not worried about like when you have people that have like, oh, they got a low budget thing or their mates making a film and they're trying, they're helping out and it's something that's kind of fine. But when you're talking about like proper jobs, like people are like, oh, I'm doing this film, I'm heading up the department, we're going to so and so film something, and we need a bunch of prosthetics. I've never sculpted anything, but I think I can have a go at it or whatever. And it just seems like as things progress in the questions and answers, it's just like I like, why did you take on the job? But also, there are very, very good professionals on these forums, like Neil Gorton's 911, where you're just basically showing everybody that you've taken on a job that you really shouldn't have done. And I don't mean that in a way like where like no one you should only do jobs that you've been doing for 20 years because everyone's got to do something for the first time. But I'm talking specifically about the jobs where people have taken on something that they clearly are utterly unqualified for and don't know how to do in the slightest. Um, and it does kind of grind my gears a bit.
Sure, because it happens more often than it ought to.
Yeah, well, if you know people who are really, really good and qualified and excellent at the certain thing they're asking and they're out of work, and then some gimp gets this job and they've said yes to something and then put the phone down and gone, shit, how am I going to do any of this? And I know you hear stories about like people saying, how are we going to do it? But they figure it out. But these things sort of play out. The ignorance plays out in front of everybody by saying, I've never done a life class before or whatever. And it's like, well, don't do it then. Get somebody who can do this, because doing a live cast for the first time on a real job is probably not the time to try. Do you know what I mean?
Oh,
You
absolutely. I
could
know
do
what
really
you
bad
mean.
things. You could hurt someone by trying a live cast on an actor for the first time. This should be something you should try out
What if
away
we
from
just
the
built a
rigors of
box
rehearsing.
and put it around this guy's head and we stick straws in the nose that come out a hole in the box and there's a hole and then we just pour it in and fill it up.
Well, I
That ought to
see.
work.
Yeah, I remember that. That's the is that I remember that headcast video. That was upsetting to watch, and also a lot of 5 minute craft ones where people are just like making gifs for all. That's how it's pitched, and you see
Put your
somebody.
hand in a bucket of plaster. I'll make a nice hand ashtray and stick my hand in a bucket of plaster.
Well, there was one where it was like a girl was going to make a head with for a it was kind of picture. I'm going to make a head for my a gift for my boyfriend, and she puts a cucumber in her mouth, and then they put a bunch of like a tub around her head, and then literally poured a bunch of alginate in, and they had like straws in the nose, and it was just like
What was
everything
the cucumber
wrong
supposed to be?
because it was a rude thing for later without the hole in the mouth, all that kind of stuff. So doing it for clicks, but the problem is you will get people that who don't know any better that will go to this for information, and it's like that's really really bad, and risky stuff like that is not good because it's not like medicine or aviation where there's like a kind of a governing body that's kind of deciding who can and cannot practice this stuff. It's a very gray area, so hence you're going to get people with jobs that they don't know how to do something. But it does make me itch a bit when someone doesn't know anything and they've taken on a job and they've got a client, and it's going to put them into very dangerous territory if they go ahead and do things with the lack of information that they've displayed in their question and their ongoing response. And so
Well, no guts, no glory.
yes, but guts can be very expensive to pay for if they're real. um but yeah, so I want to make that clear that there's a distinction between an involved and complex large scale job that needs specific information rather than I took on a job I've got to do 15 ball caps and I don't know how to do ball caps. And it's like, well, I mean, good luck if you
Yeah, I need to do
do
15
that,
ball
but
caps. What's a ball cap?
yeah,
Our
maybe.
advice to those listening is, or if you know anybody who's going to try to do this, our advice is don't accept a job doing something unless you know how to do that something.
Well, it just messes up the professional thing. I mean, there are people that will do something for the first time and do a great job of it, but they don't tend to be the ones asking in a public forum how to do everything from scratch.
Is this a particular generation we're talking about?
I don't know, and I don't want to be down on that because we're just old guys. So because we've all done something for the first time, and also what's interesting as well, and it's not entirely down to that in a way because I think there were times where when I started out, I could be part of a team that would be doing that, so I would have a small role in a live cast lots of times, so I would get to cut my teeth and gradually get more and more experienced in it. And
Sure.
it's very hard for people starting out to get those opportunities now because of NDAs and because it's just very very tricky to get your foot in the door. So I get that, but that doesn't therefore mean you should do something like I say like live casting. I mean, if you're just making a thing and you're trying it out, that's no harm no foul. But if you're doing something like a live cast of a head, or you're going to be sticking on things for the first time, and you go,
Learn how to do a life cast of a foot before you try to do a life cast of a head.
yeah, that's what you should be doing before you get a job. But I'm talking about people that have got the job. There's a deadline looming, and they've got to do something which, if they get it wrong, could be bad because they're going to try and cut corners. Because very often there's also very low budgets with this kind of stuff. So you end up with people sort of, oh, I'll just use something from a hardware store instead of a makeup
Yeah,
product.
can't afford alginate. Let's just get a bag of plaster of Paris.
Exactly. And then it's like, okay, but there's a reason why the things are what they are. You can spend too much on something, of course, but at the same time, you know, you can really, really do someone a lot of damage by just trying
Yeah, no, it's
to
it's
comment.
there's health and safety concerns with things you don't know how to do. It's our field is a lot of fun when you know what you're doing, but some of the things that we have to do
Yeah.
can be potentially life-threatening if you don't know what the hell you're doing.
Yes. I mean, I'll give you examples where people have asked me to do things that I know I don't know how to do, so I'll direct them to somebody that can do it. Like, for example, I mean, it might be different in the States, but if I have to do anything involving teeth that go in the mouth or lenses that go in an eye,
Mhm.
will direct them to people who I know do this already. I won't say, yes, I'll do it. I mean, if I have a bigger job where that is a thing, then I'll cost that in and I will use someone like Chris Lyons or, for teeth and things, or you get, the Real Eye Company for eyes because that makes sense. But I'm talking about if you don't, if your job is to make lenses and then you go onto Facebook and say, I've got to make some lenses for now. I've never touched lenses before. How can I do it? And I see it a lot. And it does vary, I think, around the world because I think in the States, correct me if I'm wrong, but in the States, it seems weirdly less of a problem to do teeth and touch lenses. Like you can do a course or something to be okay to do it.
Well, yeah, yeah, but you cannot. Somebody can't buy. I mean, Christina Patterson would be the person to talk to over here about lenses, but teeth is not as restrictive, I think, as it is in the UK. But contact lenses, you cannot buy contact lenses in the United States without a prescription. It's illegal. You shouldn't. You're supposed to have a lens tech also handling lenses on a union shoot. It's you have to. You can't not have a lens tech. But on non-union shoots, people do it. I won't. I will say, you got to get somebody who's qualified to do that. So, well, I wear contact lenses, blah blah blah. It's one thing to put contact lenses in your own eyes. It's a whole different thing to be touching the lenses and putting them in somebody else's eyes.
Yeah.
You only get two.
Yeah. I think that's where, the meat of this portion of the podcast is about. It's about knowing when
When to say
things are
no.
dangerous, when to say no, because the trouble is professionalism and knowing your limitations are important in any field. And obviously, you should be a little bit out of your depth, but if you're completely out of your depth, maybe you should take on the job, you know what I mean? And somebody else who's better at it, who's qualified and capable, can do it. But the danger is, then you don't get the job. But why should you take on a job that you might screw up and cause a lot of harm? So it's something to think about. But also, you don't want to do this in front of working professionals who are going to see this on these forums. That's the other thing,
Yeah.
because if you see people like, I've seen it before, and I screenshot all of these where we've had these conversations. Someone would do a makeup with a bunch of glass on an effect on the face or a Coke can or something that's a real can that's been cut. They'll stick it on, and then there'll be a bunch of people saying, "Oh, that's so dangerous." And then the person underneath go, "No, it's fine. I made sure I blunted it on the underside, or I put some latex on the face first, or whatever." So they've done whatever they think is safe, and then it's like they've drawn a line under it and like it's fine, it's fine. And it's like, no, but you can't do this because other people are going to see it. And what if they walk into a door and don't realize the can sticking out of their face gouges into their skin? And if you're going to start doing that on actors, then that's very expensive if you get that wrong. And it's fine when nothing goes wrong. Then when it does go wrong, it's very wrong and very expensive. So we have to kind of create an environment where we're safe and we're doing things sensibly. So that's kind of what I'm trying to defend. And a big part of that is by knowing what you should and shouldn't take on. So I just thought it would be worth mentioning this because I have seen it often. It
Yeah.
makes me itch a little bit. Not because I'm like, oh, I want that job. I'm working, I'm fine, but it's when you see people, I don't know, if someone was like, oh, I've tried taking out an appendix and there's a lot of blood. I'm not sure how to stop it. Does anyone know how to do it? You'd be like, what the fuck did you start that surgery for if you don't know what you're doing? And although this isn't
Safety
surgery,
first.
it's not surgery, but you can totally fuck up somebody's eyes or skin by doing something without knowing what you're doing. So,
Yeah. Even something as simple as I got a call this morning from a friend who's doing a tour of Shrek, and she's actually in Toronto at the moment, and their makeup. She got brought in after the tour was already on there to kind of help come in and fix things, and they've spent no money on the Shrek prosthetics for the lead character, and it's a mess. And turns out that the actor playing Shrek is allergic to prostate.
ooh, okay.
So, something as simple as that is, check, make sure that the person you're gluing something on doesn't have latex allergies or other adhesive allergies or, whatever. You just don't go blindly into a job thinking that, okay, I'm going to just do this and this and this, and everything's going to be hunky dory, because you find out that they're allergic to red 45 or whatever that's in the makeup you're putting on their face. And all of a sudden, where did these blisters come from?
Yeah. Yeah. It's a tricky one. So yeah, please be careful. Please be safe. But the other thing is as well, you don't want to screw up the department either, because if people's experience of working with makeup effects is it was shit, or it just made the guy's eyes run, or and that was all avoidable if somebody who knew what they were doing had that job and was like, well, we can't do this, that's against the law, or we need a few days between applications to give their skin a rest, or or
Yeah.
latex is going to have to be used here, so we need to check for allergies, all that kind of stuff. And if that wasn't done, you know um then bad things can happen. But it's just you don't want to make people go, oh well, we'll just do it digital next time, because this makeup was a fucking nightmare, and it was an utterly avoidable nightmare. So for your own sake, for your own reputation, and just for the job itself, I just think you can do it.
Yeah, we don't want the whole industry to fall into having to have a COVID officer on every set to make sure that, you're using the proper Q-tips and the right adhesive. We don't want to overregulate what's happening in the industry. So
Yeah,
it's about common sense.
yeah.
Common sense. It's all caps underlined.
Not necessarily that common. But also, I mean, I should point out that I know that you and I, are not our audience, and there are going to be people listening to this who are going to see this in a different way. And actually, I would really like to hear from people on this, about what we've said and what I think, and whether we're way off base. But the reason I bring it up as well is because often I don't know about something like this until someone sends me a screenshot, or they send me a link to a question. And the reason they've sent me the link is because they are horrified at the question. So it's like lots of people are saying this within industry, or seeing this within industry, and not saying anything about it outside of to each other.
Hmm.
And it's harmful for the people asking. And so, in a kind of a nice way, it's kind of like, can you should, if this was an industry you were trying to get into, it would be good to know this, that's thought of that way. um, and again, it's not about gatekeeping for people, because we've all done stuff that we didn't know how to do when we started out. It's just doing it for a job where you've already said yes and taken money, and now you've got a client, and the questions that are asked are evidence that the person who's asking this doesn't know what they're doing, and really shouldn't be doing it, or should get some help from a professional, which I guess is what they're doing when they're asking the forum. But it's kind of like I say, you wouldn't go on a forum and go, "Oh, I'm trying to stop the blood. Does anyone know how to do it?" It's kind of like, wow,
Yeah, yeah,
you
yeah.
should have done that.
Don't, ask the question before the fact, not after the fact.
Yeah, because it's a little bit, I don't know. I'm trying to protect the industry and protect the craft and protect yourself. But there we go. But if I'm way off base, please do let me know and tell me why I'm way off base, because I'm just thinking from how I see things. Um, and that's sort of, as somebody that sees a lot of people who want to do this, uh, you don't want to damage your reputation as well. You might get away with it, but I could drink 5 beers and drive home and not crash. That doesn't mean, oh, cool, now let's just dispense with drink driving laws entirely. That's a stupid thing. So we've got to be careful and protect ourselves, because if we want to keep doing this, we want to do it well. So there we go.
I couldn't have said it better.
Um, so I waffled on. Anything to add you're excited about this week?
Um, no.
As in, you nothing to be excited about, or you've already
Um,
covered it because you're just doing
well,
Sasquatchy stuff?
Sasquatchy stuff. Oh, I carved a full-size anvil out of styrofoam a couple days ago, and I'm coating it now with a rubbery urethane coating, because in Cannibal the musical, we're gonna have an audience walk-on murder near the end of the show, and so we're gonna drop an anvil on somebody's head.
Nice. Is it going to be touring?
No, they're only doing 8 performances. It's at one of the theaters where Donna and I have done a lot of work in the past, and it's something that just kind of came up. They're doing it end of October, first early November, 8 for 4 weekends, 8 shows, and a lot of effects and lots of blood gags and and severed limbs and severed heads, and
Fantastic.
it's a nutso show. But I think dropping an anvil on somebody's head is going to be lots of fun.
I think so too, especially with a very good sound effect.
Yeah.
Blood gags on
Boom.
stage, man. Bloody hell, that's amazing.
Yeah, they
But
wanted to have a splash zone in the front, for like blood splatter, with a pango gun. I said, I'm in.
we have to do
But
some range tests to
but
figure
but
out.
theater management nixed that, so we gotta figure out um, another way to do blood splatter. But there will still be lots of blood. There's going to be a smoking skeleton because one of the characters gets hit by lightning.
I look forward to seeing how
It's,
you do that.
I'll send you the script. It's hilarious. It's Trey Parker after all. Uh, South Park, Book of Mormon.
I saw Book of Mormon. That was a good show.
Yeah. Well, this musical, actually, you can find the full movie. He made a movie of Cannibal the musical in 1993, 92 or 93. The full movie is on YouTube.
Okay, I'll look it up.
It's hilarious.
We'll put that in the show notes. All right, man. I've got to wrap it up. I've got a brisket in the oven that needs coming out, and then
Oh, that sounds yummy.
I have actual brisket. That sounded like a disgusting euphemism.
Nice.
But
Nice.
yeah. All right. Okay.
Dude, we got to do this more regularly.
We are, and that's part of the reason why we have a very I had a bit of a plan and want to keep the time limit so I don't have almost any editing to do. So you
Sounds
can
good.
regularly. This year has been insane and busy and difficult for all kinds of reasons. So I've been kept from the mic, but I'm very, very keen to get back into it. There's no shortage of ideas and things to talk about. I just need to get my shit together so we can actually do this and get it out on a regular basis.
Excellent. Well, we need your comments, folks, especially about this one. If you agree or disagree, let us know. At Stuart and Todd at gmail.com. You can leave a voice message for us on the website, battleswithbitsofrubber.com. And that, having said that, to quote Trey Parker from Cannibal the Musical, have a spadoinkle day. Are you hearing feedback? Should I put my headphones on to listen?